How many games will the Green Bay Packers win in 2025? Welcome, Cheeseheads, to your official schedule preview and record prediction for the Packers in 2025. In this video, I go game by game, week by week, and I ask the question, will the Packers make the playoffs again? Can they win the NFC North? Or will they fall off? Gronk, spike the like button. Let's check out their schedule and answer those questions. Week number 1, the Packers are at home against the Lions. What a way to make a statement. Week 1, Lambeau Field against the NFC North champs and the number 1 seed in the NFC from a year ago. If there was ever a time for the Packers to beat the Lions, you would think it would be week 1. Wrong. I actually think the Lions will win. But I will say, no Ben Johnson, no Aaron Glenn. There is a chance here from a coaching perspective to take advantage. But the problem is, it's week 1. So you don't know the tendencies of the new play callers, the new offensive and defensive coordinators. You don't know anything about them. So that's the problem, right? The Packers will also be working in Matthew Golden to the offense. They'll be without Christian Watson. So the weaponry might not quite be as potent or good or explosive as it will later in the year. My problem with the Packers against the Lions is it's tough to run against the Lions. And then at the same time, if you fall behind against the Lions, they're very aggressive. They play a lot of man. And the Packers' lack of true awesome weaponry, just good weaponry, and like okay drop back pass, Jordan Love kind of gets exposed in that atmosphere, in that game, in that script. And the Lions are able to run the ball, stay balanced, play action, do their thing. And I just feel like the Packers defense quite simply has less answers for the Lions offense than that the Packers offense has for the Lions defense, or the Lions defense has for the Packers offense. Like, I truthfully feel like the Lions defense just has more answers for the Packers offense than vice versa. That's kind of what it boils down to, like, in my opinion. So, again, you would almost rather this game be later in the year as well, because the weather is probably going to be nice, right? So a dome team like Detroit's not going to be fazed by it. The Packers would probably rather play Detroit in the snow or something like that. But that's not necessarily the case. Or the real cold, which is not necessarily the case here. So I like the Lions. They're just, I think, a little bit better at the line of scrimmage. A little bit better. So I have the Lions. Week 2, the Commanders at the Packers. I'm going to go Packers here to win a big game on a short week. Short week at home, definitely advantageous. I think the Packers have enough speed at linebacker, and I think they have a good enough offense to keep the Commanders off balance. The Commanders need to possess the ball and go on long drives, and I feel like the Packers can do that against the Commanders. They can run the ball. They can possess the ball. They can mess with Dan Quinn, right? Matt LaFleur beat Dan Quinn senseless in the playoffs a couple of years ago when he was in Dallas. I wouldn't be shocked if the Packers put up a 30 bomb in this game. And Jaden Daniels was chasing, and the Packers ultimately just had more points at the end of the game, quite simply. So this could be a shootout early in the year, but I think the Packers can take it at home. Week 3, I think Green Bay beats Cleveland. Cleveland has some unknowns at quarterback. They do have a talented defense, and playing in Cleveland can be tricky sometimes, but I trust Matt LaFleur in this type of game to beat this type of opponent. This is the type of team that the Packers should beat, so I'll take the Packers. It's pretty simple. Plus, the run game of the Packers, I think, gives them enough to keep Cleveland's defense and pass rush out of those situations where they can torment Jordan Love. Week 4, I like the Packers to beat the Cowboys and start 3-1. The Cowboys are not good against the run. That's not a good thing to be against the Packers. At the same time, we saw Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love against the Cowboys in the playoffs a couple years ago, how that went. At the same time, I also think that Cowboys offensively are a bit one-dimensional. If you can force them to run the ball, if you can really get aggressive rushing Dak and get after him, you can beat them. I know that they'll move the ball and score with CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens, especially against the Packers secondary. But I feel like the Packers they can play their style of game against Dallas on their side of the offense because they can keep Dallas off balance. We saw that a couple times last year, like early in the year against the Saints with the Cowboys, where they just couldn't keep pace because they couldn't deal with the balance of the offense. Week 6, the Bengals. I'm going to go Bengals here. I don't think the Packers have a good enough pass rush or secondary to go toe-to-toe with Joe Burrow. And I just think ultimately the Bengals will get more stops in this game than Joe Burrow in Lambeau Field, going up and down the field, throwing to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. So I'm going to go with the Bengals. Week 7, I'm going to go Packers over the Cardinals, although this is a toss-up. Cardinals in Arizona can be tricky. The Cardinals have improved this offseason on their defensive line, on their defense in general. But I think the Packers have a deep weapon core that will be able to torment a pretty terrible secondary for the Cardinals, especially at corner. And then at the same time, I think the Packers can slow down the Cardinals' running game enough, and they can track down Kyler Murray. Similar reasons why I like them to beat the Commanders. I kind of feel like Kyler will struggle more against the zone of the Packers and things like that. So I think the Packers will be able to just be more passing-wise effective against the Cardinals than the Cardinals are against the Packers. So that's why I have them beating the Cardinals. Week 8, I'm going to go Packers, or am I? I'm going to go Steelers if it's Aaron Rodgers. If it's not Aaron Rodgers, I would take the Packers. But if it's Aaron Rodgers, I'm going to take the Steelers. Just because revenge game, it would be too much revenge to pass up for me. I love the storylines. I love the narratives. Aaron Rodgers beating the Packers would be tasty. I also think the Steelers' defense is a big challenge at home. So Green Bay going to Pittsburgh, having to deal with TJ Watt, the crowd noise, that pass rush, that front seven, DK Metcalf on the other side. Aaron Rodgers, that would be awesome. Week 9, that would be the game of the year. That would be so much fun. Week 9, the Carolina Panthers at the Packers. I'm going to go Packers. I just think they're the better team. I think they have the better defense. They're at home. I like Bryce Young in the Panthers offense, and there's a way that the Panthers can maybe outscore the Packers, but against this Panther defense, there should be no resistance. Week 10, the Eagles at Green Bay. We saw this matchup 2 times last year. I'm going with the Eagles on a Monday night in Lambeau. It should be fun, but I still don't think the Packers can truly stop Saquon. And I think even if they do, that means you have to sell out. You're going to give up yards to A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and company. And then at the same time, the Eagles' defense looked real good against Jordan Love last year in multiple games. Week 11, the Giants in New York. Could be a potential upset for the Giants, but I'm going to take the Packers. All you have to do here is block the Giants, and I think the Packers have the offensive line necessary to do so. The Giants don't have a good enough offense to keep up. Week 12, the Vikings at the Packers. I'm going to take Packers at home to beat the Vikings, although I think they lost last year at Lambeau. But I think that they'll probably be even with the Vikings. So, yeah, I'm going to take the Vikings in the last week of the year. I'll take the Packers here. I just feel like they'll split. They're very even teams. J.J. McCarthy, who knows what he's going to be, but I respect Kevin O'Connell. I respect Brian Flores. I think LaFleur, though, has done a pretty good job against Flores for the most part. It's really been on the Packer defense to step up against the Viking offense. And I think in one of these games, JJ just won't be up to the task. I think in one of them he will, and one of them he won't. That's kind of the way I think of it. Week 13, in Detroit, I think the Packers will win this game. I actually think the Packers in a dome, it's suitable for their speed. At this point, Golden should be fully interworked into the offense. Maybe Christian Watson's back. You're talking about one of the fastest offenses in that case. At the same time, the Lions, you're going to know more about what they're doing on offense and defense from a schematical perspective with their new coordinators, maybe more exposable from that perspective. And also, we saw the Packers beat the Lions 2 years ago in this similar spot. I think that it happens because the Packers get ahead. And if they get ahead, they can force mistakes from Jared Goff. Week 14, Packers beat the Bears at home. They own the Bears at Lambeau Field, pretty much. But I would also say that I think they maybe lost there last year, but regardless, they own the Bears for the most part. Ben Johnson brings a new challenge. Caleb Williams, this roster is very talented, but I think the Packers will beat them at least once. I actually think they could beat them 2 times, but I think the Bears will beat them in Chicago, let's say. just because I do respect the Bears' new talent. I respect Dennis Allen as a defensive coordinator. I respect Ben Johnson as an offensive coordinator. I respect Joe Thuney, their offensive line additions, their weaponry. They have too much talent, I think, to lose to the Packers 2 times. So I think they're going to beat them once. I think that the Packers, this is going to be a tough game against Denver, but I'll lean towards them winning. This could be a game changer. Like, if they lose this game, they could miss the playoffs. But if the Packers win this game, I think it will be because Matt LaFleur's, usage of motion, play action, screens, off-balance nature against Denver's aggressive defense, that could get them some yards and some big explosives. And at the same time, on the other side, I think that Denver could move the ball here, and Denver could definitely make some plays with Bo Nix. But I don't think the Broncos are so talented on offense that it's going to overwhelm the Packers. So I'll take the Packers, although this could be a loss. I wouldn't be surprised. Week 17, I'll take the Ravens in Lambeau, even if it's cold or snowing, because they have Derrick Henry, they have Lamar Jackson, some cheat codes, and I just think the Ravens are going to match the Packers' physicality and perhaps even outweigh it. And I also think the Ravens have the much better defense and quarterback. So I'll take the Ravens there. So I have them at 10-7, surprisingly. All offseason, I've kind of been talking about the Packers as a team that would regress and finish 9-8, 8-9, just miss the playoffs. And as you guys can tell, I could definitely give them some more losses. They could lose to Dallas. They could lose to the Commanders. They could lose to the Cardinals, right? They could lose to the Broncos, as I've mentioned. They could lose to the Lions twice. I wouldn't be surprised. But they could also beat some of the teams I've said that they lost to, right? They could beat the Bengals. They could beat the Steelers. They could beat the Bears twice. I wouldn't be that surprised. So, this is a tough one to manage because it's such a difficult schedule. It's such a difficult division. So the Packers kind of have one of the easier schedules in the division, but not necessarily the easiest. So I have them at 10-7, but I could easily reevaluate and have them at 9-8, maybe even 11-6, but more likely to go down by 1 than up by 1. But you guys let me know in the comments what you think. I'm halfway in, halfway out on the Packers. I currently have them as the 6th seed in the NFC. Let me know what you think. Gronk, spike the like button. Get in the comments and let me know what you thought of my prediction for the Packers in 2025. Don't forget to subscribe and check out the rest of my record predictions. Peace.